Hey, Live All Good podcast listeners. We apologize for the lateness of this episode, but it is the latest episode of Move the Needle. In this episode, JR and I talk about the gender pay gap and some tips to help close that gap. All that's coming up after the break.
Our priority at Blue Monarch Communications is building your confidence as an effective presenter. Whether you're preparing for a formal presentation, a keynote address, an interview, or presenting an idea or concept to your team or your clients, we are here to ensure that you are poised to effectively communicate your content while engaging and connecting with your audience. Let our team help you shine.
Hey folks, this is Lee Grigsby here, health and life coach and founder of Live All Good Coaching. I'll be on the air with Podcast Business News Network, talking about the various things around health and wellness and mental health. Also talking about how mindset is critical to achieving the goals that you set for yourself. You can reach me at liveallgood44@gmail.com, or you can go to my website, liveallgood.com, and fill out the contact form and reach me there. Once again, that's liveallgood.com. Go to the About section, fill out the contact form, or you can reach me at liveallgood44@gmail.com. All right, everybody. We are back from the break. We are here with this month's episode of Move the Needle. And before I introduce your favorite and famous co-host of the show, I just want to apologize for everybody that we've had a few scheduling issues, and we typically try to bring you the show a little sooner in the month, but here we are. We are still bringing you the show nonetheless. So thank you for your patience as we got this month's episode to you. Now, without further ado, your favorite co-host and mine, JR Ford.
Howdy,
How are you doing, sir?
Howdy, everybody. I am doing well.
Good.
How are you?
Good, man.
Fine day.
Doing good.
I mentioned this to you before, but we got a puppy. We got a new puppy.
Well, I don't want people to think that you catch COVID and then you get a puppy. So let's not.
No, that is not. Please don't conflate those two. They are two separate stories altogether.
Well, please do.
Yeah.
Please do tell us the new puppy's name. Although, folks, I know he's telling you guys. I know the puppy's name, but please do share. Yeah. Please do share the new puppy's name.
Yeah. So we have a 9-week-old yellow lab named Hershey, and we got her last Saturday, not this not yesterday, but last Saturday.
Sure.
And it's like having a newborn who can toddle at the same time, and they kind of speak, but they don't. It's not coherent enough. So it's like a combination of all those things, and it has fur, and it has little razor sharp teeth, little puppy teeth. So, but nice. So we're in the midst of that. So I'm playing a single parent because Vanessa is traveling. So yeah, it's got a bunch of things going on. Yeah. So nice. I'm burning both ends of the candle. So if my emotions come out, it's because I've been single parenting for about 48 now. No, 72. No.
I think he's lost track, folks. Well, we definitely we definitely welcome Hershey to the family.
Yeah, and she's so cute and cuddly.
And folks, once we start doing video episodes and maybe even some live episodes, possibly Hershey might make a cameo or two.
Yeah, possibly. It has happened already during my during my normal work. It just happens to
Nice.
come into the screen and have a furry fluffy animal, and they're just like,
And everybody forgets. Well,
oh,
what were we talking about? It's the,
I
yeah, yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
Like, what
Everybody
about that
melts.
performance plan?
Yeah, yeah. Nice.
All good, man.
Well,
All good.
we can't wait to see Hershey, and we're glad that you are back with us for sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, man, on this month's episode, Move the Needle, we are gonna tackle something article that we came across, and as you all, as our listeners, I believe know, we try to have the difficult, challenging conversations, right? Not just about race, but anything that is about equity and unfairness, right? We will try to bring it to you and have that type of discussion and see where that goes. Hopefully, with maybe resolution for yourself or other ways that obviously Move the Needle is going to help as well. So, in today's discussion, we came across this article that is about the gender gap in pay. Okay. And if this article is 11 ways that women can shrink the gender pay gap and better achieve their financial goals. All right. Excuse me. So, first of all, just want to say that this article was published by Bankrates on bankrate.com by
Mhm.
Sarah Foster. She's the author of the article and comes up with 11 different tips or ways that this gender gap can be closed. So, JR, man, you want to go ahead and we'll get into talking about the different tips that they say, what she brings up?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Let's go
cool.
for it.
Well, she starts by obviously talking about what we just mentioned, right? There's a
Yeah.
gender gap in pay. Um,
Hmm.
and so one of the facts about that is women earn 82 cents per dollar, 82 cents on the dollar for every, that's not even saying it right. Let me try that again. Women earn 82 cents for every dollar that a man earns. There
Right.
we go. I
Yep.
can say that
Yep.
correctly.
Yeah.
Um, but for women of color, it's worse. It's 68 cents on the dollar. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
If you thought it
It's
was bad for women of color, or I guess black women,
yeah.
Hispanic
Keep
women,
going.
right?
Yeah.
Because Hispanic women, I guess, are women of color too. But so black women earn 68 cents on the dollar.
Hmm.
Hispanic women earn 64 cents on the dollar. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that clearly shows a gender pay gap.
Right.
And while
It's
I'm
well known.
Mhm.
I would say it's well known, but people who either read and do research about it, about the inbound research will kind of help inform that. But people who
Sure.
aren't in that realm may not realize that the reason why your spouse may be getting paid more than you is because of certain factors that you may not be aware of. So
Mhm.
that's kind of the varying perspective I think that comes from this, and I think it's also, I guess, we'll get into it, but can you distill this down to certain factors? And I think that we're going to get into that,
I think so.
regarding, yeah, regarding
Yeah,
like,
go ahead.
population, education,
Mhm.
representation, all those kind of layers that this article kind of gets into. I think that's probably how you can distill down the value
Mhm.
of each of those different groups that you just highlighted.
Well, and I'm sure I remember we did our episode just on salary the
Hmm.
cost benefit, right? Or not cost benefit, but the cost of racism, right? And we talked
Yep.
about
Yep.
the information from that particular podcast. It's called that, the same
Yep.
title. But just diving into the specifics of the the salary figures, right? Since
Hmm.
1967, I think we went way back to, and
Yeah.
we were only comparing whites and blacks. We weren't even factoring in Hispanic, Asian,
Hmm.
those kind of things. Um,
Right.
so I'm not entirely sure but I thank you for setting the table, right? Because we want people to
Yeah.
keep in mind those different factors, whether it's region,
Yep. Yep.
population, whether urban area,
Hmm.
suburban area, rural area, those kind of things.
Yeah.
So this
Yep.
article, I think, will generically touch on certain things, and
Hmm.
then I have a perspective that I want to share as well, right? Especially with some of the
Yep.
later tips. Um,
Yep.
so let me go ahead and start with some of the tips that they talk about, that she
Hmm.
mentions, and I believe that she talks to several different people for her research in this article,
Right.
right?
Right. Yep.
So, and again, folks, I want to make sure that we push out there this article, from what we read, is meant to be positive, right? It's meant
Right.
to give women hope and
Right.
tips on how to navigate this world that's already against you as far as the gender pay gap. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the first tip that is in this article is do as much research as possible. Do not be afraid to chat with your colleagues, talk to your colleagues about what they make and how they navigated the issue. Okay.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
there's she quotes the CEO here of North Financial Advisors.
Hmm.
They specialize in helping women meet their financial goals.
Yeah.
So I think her name is Katie North. Okay.
Yep. Yep.
I'm assuming Katie is a woman. But Katie says focus on the things that you really can control. So when it
Hmm.
comes to negotiating this pay gap, get as much information as possible. Okay. Um, know the pay scale. Start looking for salary data of workers with the education level and experience
Hmm.
of the job that you are applying for or that you currently have. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's really the first tip,
Hmm.
is get as much information as possible.
Yeah. Do the research.
And
Yep.
I think
Yeah.
people may have I don't want to say issue with that, but they may be intimidated by that sometimes, um,
Yeah. Yep.
because not everyone is going to be forthcoming with what they make, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know about your coworkers or anything, but
Hmm.
again, that might feel private and
Yeah.
people might not. And I know I've had several pay conversations just, at my job.
Hmm.
And we don't necessarily talk about the specific number
Right.
that each of us
You
make.
dance around it, right?
Of course,
You
you say things like,
Yeah.
"Well, I get enough," or,
Yeah.
I've had a conversation with people where I told them what I started at, what
Hmm.
I came
Yeah.
in at, to help
Yeah.
them kind of negotiate certain things. But yeah,
Right.
so that's
Now,
a tip.
why do you think that is? Why do you think that why do you feel the way you feel
Mhm.
about foregoing something like that to help
Giving
somebody
someone
else?
the specific number, you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Why does that give you the feeling that you have or
Mhm.
you had that gets you to the point or gets you to the decision that I'm not going
Mhm.
to talk
Sure,
about my
exactly.
salary per se?
Mhm. Mhm.
Why does that happen? Why do you react in that way versus saying, oh yeah,
Right. I make
I make sure
150,000, which I
I
don't
know,
make
yeah.
150,000.
Oh yeah, I get 25% bonus every year, all the time.
Right, right. And
Like,
you know what?
oh, oh.
I think for the reasons that you don't well, I would say I don't want any of my coworkers to feel uh bad, right?
Hmm.
Um I think some of us have different roles, but I didn't want anyone to feel bad, like if they didn't get a raise and I know I did. That
Mm,
is that is
okay.
private, right?
Yeah.
Um, or like reverse that. I don't want to be
Hmm.
angry if I know someone is getting paid more than me and the contribution is not quite the same.
Mm.
Because you can find
Yeah,
that
I get
information
it.
out too. If
Yeah.
you're sharing salaries, you
Yeah.
might find that, the contribution is not quite the same. So that
Yeah.
might make me feel a different way if we share those
Yep.
things. So
Right.
I think
Yeah.
that's where
I
my personal feeling comes from. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's part of kind of being conditioned that you don't talk about certain things, you know.
That too.
I can't explicitly remember my mom saying, "Don't ever talk about money to anybody, outside of yourself." And my mom
Right.
didn't do that, but I
Hmm.
think it was just kind of common knowledge and in our upbringing that you didn't discuss money with anybody, and
Hmm.
you certainly didn't discuss your feelings. It just wasn't a thing.
Right.
But I think
Right.
you know as we've aged into adulthood, looking back at that, didn't necessarily give us all the tools, but it did give us those guardrails about what is personal, what
Hmm.
is most critical to your being.
Hmm.
And part of that is the value, especially with a job. That's kind of how we measure. That's how we measure our value,
Right.
right?
Right.
Yeah.
The direct measure of value for
Hmm.
sure.
Yeah.
I would say this though. It's if it was like a personal friend at the
Hmm.
job, um,
Yeah.
like I mean, and I guess like here we go, splitting hairs, right? Really getting into
Yeah.
semantics because then I don't want to say
Yeah.
that I don't have personal friends at
It's
work. I do.
it's situational, right?
It
I
very
I think what
much
you're trying to.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, very much
Yep.
is. Because
Yeah.
like I guess it matters if I'm mentoring them or if I'm trying to help them get ahead, or
Hmm.
maybe if I'm leaving and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and don't feel either way about it then, you know?
Hmm. Yep. Yep.
But yeah, that's interesting topic. Or
Yeah.
even tip, right? Discuss,
Oh yeah.
don't be afraid to discuss it with your coworkers.
Right.
Um, but I want to actually then move on because it
Yeah.
literally what we were talking about, what you asked me.
Hmm.
The second tip for how to kind of close this gender pay gap. Um, if you are using a recruiter, right? Or
Yeah.
in the hiring process, it
Hmm.
says do not divulge your earning history with recruiters or hiring managers.
So I guess my question about the I guess the sensitivity around
Mhm.
the common reasoning. I think for me it's about divulging or opening up too much of yourself to someone who may not have your best interests, for example,
Mm.
in
Mhm.
mind. I think
Mhm.
that also plays into it, and I think that kind of gets to your earlier example too, where you don't have that inherent trust just about anybody.
Very
I
true.
think yeah, it's kind of common sense, sensical. Uh, but yeah, I mean, you really, I mean, if you are going to use a recruiter or a hiring manager,
Mhm.
I think you need to establish that earnest, trust, if you're going to go that route,
I agree
that
with
the,
you
that someone, yeah.
100% because I have an example I want to share with you actually.
Hmm.
This
Yeah.
was years ago and I was mid-level in TV at the time. And
Uh-huh.
so, exploring options, wasn't necessarily looking to leave the current job that I was in.
Yep.
But so in the interview process, and I kind of want to say the name of who I was interviewing with, but I won't
Yeah.
because well, no, I will say this. It's a huge conglomerate, a huge corporation of many different channels put together. Okay, they do
Brag.
sports, movies.
Brag.
No, not name dropping at all. Not name dropping.
I can't tell you, but
But you
I
know.
will let you know.
Well,
All
the
good, man.
word
All good.
here's the worst part. The worst part about it was I knew what I was making, and at the time, like I said, I
Mhm.
was mid-level, so I don't know, I was somewhere between like 30 and 40K per year, right?
Yeah.
Building up
Yep.
my TV experience. And
Yep.
so in the interview, I think it's fair when you ask, okay, well, what is the starting salary for my level of experience? Right.
Right.
In again, in we're even talking, see, folks, just keep this in mind. This article is about the closing the gender pay gap for women. Okay.
Right.
So I'm a man doing this very same thing, right? And
Mhm.
and clearly this company was like, well, our starting range is X and X.
Mhm.
Now, their starting salary range was lower than what I was currently making. And I'm like, okay, well, I understand you have a range because I read that. And I'm like, this
Mhm.
is in the interview process. I said, but I'm
Yeah.
just trying to get a clear picture, if this interview goes, like, if we are a good fit for each other, I want to
Right.
make sure that I'm not moving backwards. So
Yeah.
again, and I thought my question was pretty specific for
Yeah.
someone with my years of experience. I'm not coming out of college. I think I was
Right.
already, 4 or 5 years into the professional television
Yeah.
broadcasting world
Right.
and had been in a top 20 market. So all of those things
Mm.
make difference in what you get
Yeah.
paid. So that's why
Right.
I'm asking them, yeah, let me know. And
Yeah.
they
Seems
would
like
not.
a simple
Sure. It
HR question.
You don't have to give me a range, right? But give me what
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
starting point would
Yeah.
be. And so no, they danced around it so much. And so to your question of building that
Mhm.
trust, they did
Yeah.
not build that trust in the interview. So even if the interview was great, right? Because the
Yeah.
other thing I asked for, and folks who listen to this, was okay, relocation compensation, right?
Yeah.
I would have
Yep.
been moving cities. And some companies say, yes, we offer that. Some don't. I think they offered like if you're moving cities, not just like you got to get a U-Haul and drive an hour away. You've got to
Right.
pack up, hire movers, all of that. Think they
Yeah.
offered me $500.
Come on.
And so, yeah.
Come on.
So on top of not
Yeah.
answering the question about salary, on
Mhm.
and then adding that, low relocation compensation,
What does that
that
pay for?
they did not build the trust. So I can
Yeah.
see your point, and I can also see the tip number two about not divulging your earning history to um a hiring manager or a recruiter,
Right.
because it can kind of turn against you if
Mhm.
it can continue the gap, it could
Right.
definitely do that.
Yep.
Yeah, so yeah, I couldn't believe that, man. It is killing me so bad because I really want to say the name, but I won't. I won't say that it was for Turner Sports. I won't say that.
All right. All
Yeah,
right.
even though I just dropped it, but it's cool. Excuse me. So tip number 3 is do not be afraid to job hop. Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, excuse me, what they mention here is like, so, people typically get raises and we're going to take these last few years during the pandemic. Let's
Mhm.
remove that. Let's remove that. But a lot of times people get raises every year. Okay.
Right.
Well, this tip about job, don't be afraid to job hop, means that, yeah, if you start somewhere and an opportunity opens up somewhere else,
Mhm.
don't be afraid to take that opportunity if it's a higher salary or if the overall
Yeah.
compensation package is better.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah. Yep.
people do that all the
Yeah.
time, you know.
Yeah, I think, be, I think in part because of COVID, um, we, I think we saw, reported data has, said that,
Hmm.
there was a kind of an attrition, kind of mass exodus, or
The
the
Great
great
Resignation.
resignation,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that has, happened since COVID.
Hmm.
And I think that probably it it expedited or it moved up the timeline, I think,
Hmm.
for that attrition to happen.
I agree.
Um, and it did it at a probably an alarming rate because you saw a lot of people moving on to a new job or getting out of their particular industry
Hmm.
and either stopping work or be creating their own business. Um, I think that's probably empowered a lot of people and that they have a choice, especially, women of color. We've
Hmm.
seen
Hmm.
more representation
Hmm.
in, mainstream, big media. You look at, I look at, commercials from Target and they're highlighting a black, skincare product owner,
Hmm.
small
Hmm.
business. So having the visibility, I think, also helps where if you see representation of yourself, if you're a woman, if you're a black woman, or black man, or someone who is not necessarily seen in what you see on TV or on your
Hmm.
screen,
Hmm.
when you do start to see that, you may get inspired.
Hmm.
Seeing someone who a might look like certainly does not hurt. Um, and I've seen much more commercials nowadays having that diversity,
Hmm.
in women and women in shapes, and sizes, you name it. There's a lot
Absolutely.
more representation, and I think that kind of helps to spark that independence kind of movement that we've seen over the past 2 years, where people have taken the job hop,
Hmm.
and have
Well,
moved on to something else.
and to your point exactly, I will read this quote
Hmm.
directly from the article. It says, entrepreneurship is the
Hmm.
key to accelerating the pace of change for gender parity. It puts the power in the hands, in
Yeah.
our hands, right?
Yep.
So, as you said, as women continue to see the representation of other women business owners, right?
Yep.
Other women entrepreneurs,
Hmm.
and folks, we're not just talking about the stereotypical things of hair salons or nail
Right.
salons, anything like that. Yes, like exactly to your point, man. Um,
Hmm.
representation matters,
Yeah.
and I think part of that, and I'm going to fold this right into the next tip. Part of
Hmm.
that representation, and again, this is tip number 4, you all, of how to close that gender pay gap. But this is very key too. Always ask for more. Tip number 4 is always ask for more. So whether you're negotiating, we talked about, I think it was tip number 2, don't
Hmm.
give your earning history, right, to the
Yeah.
recruiter or to the hiring
Yep.
manager, right?
Yep.
Same thing in negotiation, always ask for more. So in
Yeah.
a negotiation, you might start at a number that you have never had before in your earning history. But if you start there, fine, because the company or the hiring manager, recruiter, they may come in at a lower number, but that lower number might be above what you're willing to accept.
Right. Right.
So I love that tip for sure. Uh, don't be afraid to ask for more. Like that is
Yeah.
hugely important. You have to
Yeah.
negotiate for yourself.
Yeah. And I and, being a middle-aged adult, in my career, being 20 years,
Hmm.
um, I think it's easier said than done. For probably a good size of the population who's working,
Agreed.
to ask for more than what I'm worth, or to to actually use that power. I think it's underestimated how much power the employee or the staff member has in those conversations. It's a part of this society that we're in where we're conditioned to think that asking, even as a Black man, there are a lot of overlaps and similarities with other minorities. But I think looking at it that way, you start to see that this is something that will help to further your career. All you got to do is ask. The worst that they can say is no. However, if they see that you are demonstrating your value, that's the key thing. How have you prepared yourself to substantiate or justify why you want more out of the company,
absolutely.
Out of the business. Yep. And that's hard. That's hard to do.
I love how you bring that up. That I think that is a general thing that's hard to do, right? I think we're like you said, we're conditioned to think the company has our best interest in mind, and that it's always going to be fair. It's always, but here, if you don't ask, you don't know. And again, loyalty is not necessarily tied to salary or tied to compensation. Unfortunately, the companies who have figured it out do that, right? But by and large, that's not necessarily an overall practice. But no, I love that, man. Yeah, absolutely. Ask, right?
Yep.
And this folds into tip number 5 very nicely. Folds in. Get comfortable with negotiating by practice, right? So it literally says here in the article, negotiating isn't exactly a comfortable practice. But it says like practice even in a mirror, right? Like talk to yourself kind of, or I would even say like ask a friend to role play, but take it seriously, right? Because if you ask for, again, just throwing out figures here, right? When I was making 30 40K, and let's say I wanted to negotiate for double, right? So and if I feel I'm worth 80K, fine, negotiate for that. But at the time, that would have felt like, whoa, what am I doing? Right? Like, that's not the pay scale I saw, or I'm just at this level. Do I really? Hey, you practice being comfortable. It's almost like I use in coaching sometimes. Be comfortable with being uncomfortable, right?
Right. Yep.
If you don't practice it, you won't know.
Yeah. How do you prepare yourself for it?
For that conversation?
For it? Yeah. Do you prepare yourself for something like this?
Because if it's right in that conversation, right in the moment, you can get nervous about it. You can and then feel like, ooh, but then your body language shows, maybe your voice starts to crack or whatever it is, and the employer might take advantage of that and be like, okay, cool, well, they're not quite ready for this upgrade either. You know what I mean? So
it is not easy. It is never easy, but I think as you start to do it and train and practice, you will get a lot more comfortable with. I mean, it's basically a debate. People who have great debating skills, are usually able to sway people to get them to their level of agreement, or great persuasion skills. But it comes with practice. You
definitely have read this article, sir, because that slides right into the next tip.
See?
Well, kind of, but I remember you were saying, in practicing negotiating, right, getting comfortable, I think you said like justifying your value. Well,
Yeah.
tip number 6 in how to close this gender pay gap is come to the table with ways to demonstrate what you are worth.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's fold. I think it's like 4, 5, and 6. These tips really
Hmm.
are um, uh, synergistic with each other. I mean, they should be because they're tips to close
Yeah.
the gender pay gap. But
Right.
you start getting practicing negotiating, right? But then
Hmm.
you have to back up. Okay, I want this number,
Right.
and they're like, well, okay, why? Well, because this is what I bring X,
Hmm.
Y, and Z to the table.
Yep.
Also, while I've been here, I've learned 1, 2, and 3. So not only did you bring something to the company, but
Hmm.
since you've been at the company, you've learned a new skill set or several
Right.
skill sets.
Right.
Being able, that's part of that practice in negotiation, you
Yep.
know, instead of, and maybe you have it written down, bullet points so that you don't forget. Because again, it's kind of like going to the doctor sometimes,
Hmm.
right? People have white coat syndrome where they're going to check your blood pressure, you rush to get there, now you're hyped up, your blood
Yeah.
pressure's higher, they're like, okay, give me 5, 10 minutes and I'll check it again, right?
Right.
Well,
Yep.
same thing in negotiating for what you want and
Hmm.
asking for more, right?
Yeah.
In the moment you can get flustered,
Yeah.
your feelings can start getting coming over, and you forget the facts of
Yeah.
what you're actually there for. So
Right.
that's why the practicing is important. That's why
Yep.
coming to the table with what you already are worth for this higher salary, for this negotiation. Man,
Yeah.
those are
Right.
all important things.
Yep. Yep.
Man, so what do you say that we take a break, and when we come back, we will discuss um, the rest of the tips for closing the gender pay gap.
Sounds good.
All right. Stay tuned, folks. We're going to take a break and we'll be right back. Hey, folks. This is Lee Grigsby here, health and life coach and founder of Live All Good Coaching. I'll be on the air with Podcast Business News Network, talking about the various things around health and wellness and mental health. Also talking about how mindset is critical to achieving the goals that you set for yourself. You can reach me at liveallgood44@gmail.com, or you can go to my website, liveallgood.com, and fill out the contact form and reach me there. Once again, that's liveallgood.com. Go to the About section, fill out the contact form, or you can reach me at liveallgood44@gmail.com.
Our priority at Blue Monarch Communications is building your confidence as an effective presenter. Whether you're preparing for a formal presentation, a keynote address, an interview, or presenting an idea or concept to your team or your clients, we are here to ensure that you are poised to effectively communicate your content while engaging and connecting with your audience. Let our team help you shine.
All right, folks, welcome back from that break. If you haven't been with us for the first segment, we will continue. This is our episode for June of Move the Needle. We are discussing 11 tips that women can use to kind of close the gender pay gap. And we covered 6 different tips in the first segment. Let me see if I can do a quick recap. I might lose my place here, though. I will say this, though, about the recap. We talked about practicing with negotiating, asking for more, making sure we one of the first tips, I believe the first one was talking
Mhm.
to your coworkers, right? Don't be
Yeah.
afraid to discuss salary, which can be weird, can be
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah.
But those we went through 6 tips so far. We've got some more to go through. Um, so yeah, Jr. Why don't we jump right in, right, with the rest
Yeah.
of the tips? Okay.
Yeah. Let's go.
Well, I think this ties into the first 6, obviously, as it should.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to ask for more, you're negotiating and you've practiced, you come to the table with what you bring to the company. Tip
Hmm.
number 7 is don't be afraid to ask for more reviews. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think this particular tip speaks to not getting hired at a company, right? But where you already are.
Hmm.
And if you have a review, like typically you might have a yearly review of
All
your own
right.
performance.
Yep.
Hopefully you have a mid-year review, right? Because it can give you what things to work on before that review, that performance review, so that
Hmm.
if you're up for performance raise, bonuses, those kind of things. So that
Yep.
tip talks about ask for more reviews. So maybe they become quarterly.
Hmm.
Maybe I don't know if it's really, really low, maybe they become weekly. Like I don't know, right? I don't know what that
Yeah.
looks like. But
Yeah.
that's that I think that's also a good thing because that can number one make you aware of what you bring to the table, right? If you have more reviews
Hmm.
and if there are some weak points where you can improve, that can help you improve, or it can also show you how much the company actually does value what you do.
Right.
Not, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's really interesting that um, you know, basically it's empowering
Hmm.
uh, the person, the person who is asking, who wants to, have the salary increase or the compensation increase.
Hmm.
Um, it really kind of is up to you. Everything that we've listed so far
Sure.
is empowerment for that person, for that lady. I mean, these tips are focused on the gender gap,
Sure.
but that's only one group, right?
Yeah.
It also, like you described earlier in the intro,
Hmm.
you have these other groups who are either underrepresented, in
Hmm.
multiple ways, economically,
Hmm.
educationally. They are not dissimilar from these other caveats that we talk about,
Agreed.
in terms of that underrepresentation. It is similar, and if you break it down based on, ethnicity, race,
Hmm.
socioeconomic, it all kind of leads to the same points.
I
And this is a good example of that, where
hmm
um, you have to be in control of your own destiny.
yeah.
If you want to, get that raise, you have to demonstrate that. And how do you demonstrate that? Well, you know certainly have to have some roadmap. It's a performance plan.
Hmm.
If you're in a career that is able to track your performance, on that cadence.
Absolutely.
So yeah, yeah,
I was going to read a quote from the
yeah, go
article,
ahead.
like you were
Yeah.
saying. It says that this asking for more reviews is a confident approach, and it
Hmm.
it gives you, let's it say, the this confident approach shows off your skills and determination to get things done. But more specifically, in this quote says, "Remember, you deserve the raise and you have earned it."
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
specifically asking for more reviews, it will show what you do. So be careful
Yeah.
because if you haven't earned it, don't ask for
Yeah.
more reviews. But
Right.
No, I agree with you 100%,
Yeah.
man. The
Like,
the
make sure you're
first
doing a good job beforehand. Yeah. Yeah.
I think the first 7 tips were,
Yeah.
again, the article is about, for women closing the
Mhm.
gender pay gap, but the first 7 tips definitely can be used by anyone
Yeah.
who
Oh yeah.
has a pay gap, right?
Right. Yep.
This one is specific to women. Okay. Well,
Mhm.
and I take that back. Maybe it's not specific to women, but again, that's what this article is about.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
for
Yep.
for women, and we listed in the very beginning, Black women get 68 cents on the dollar, or women in
Mhm.
general, 82 cents
Yeah.
on the dollar. Black
Yeah.
women 68 cents, and Hispanic women 64 cents. So
Yeah. Crazy.
that's what this
Yeah.
article and this conversation is centered around.
Mhm.
Tip number 8 is have an open dialogue about the domestic work burden that befalls many women.
Hmm.
So as we know, both you and I have wives who work,
Yep.
and both of us share fairly equally. Even as you mentioned, you are single parenting for a bit because Vanessa has been
Yeah.
out,
Yeah. Yep.
but and out working, y'all, not just out partying.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. Gallivanting.
right,
around the
right.
world.
Just
Yeah.
touring the world,
Yeah.
touring the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think we fairly evenly, without much discussion, we have both evenly shared the domestic burden in our households,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
It's never been one of those, oh, well, no, you're the mom, you handle that. No, not that kind
Right.
of thing.
Yeah.
But let's be clear, there are many working women who that does fall on, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Whether it's their significant others are not willing to share that burden,
Mhm.
or maybe the jobs that they have just are not flexible. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
But that's a critical piece. So I want to
Yeah.
share this before I ask your opinion on just
Mhm.
that tip, right?
Yeah.
It says here that experts say there's no reason for the gender pay gap, whether it's discriminatory or
Mhm.
non-discriminatory. There's no
Mhm.
reason for it, right? But the responsibility of childcare that falls on so many women
Mhm.
has a profound effect on one's pay over time.
Right. Right.
So, that almost, to me, and then sorry, I'll let you jump in,
Yeah.
but
No. Go for it.
that almost means to me that working mothers should be paid more. That's kind of what that
Yeah.
means to me, right? If
Yeah.
they, by and large, as a
Mhm.
generality, if working mothers are the ones that have to still work on childcare, if they're the
Yeah.
ones doing a lot of the domestic burden or carrying that,
Mhm.
well, you kind of got to pay them more. Kind of like
That-
paying teachers more. But anyway, that's just my
I know.
soapbox.
That's another episode. Another
Absolutely.
episode.
Absolutely.
Great next topic, by the way.
not that I'm
Teacher
adding
pay, teacher
right,
pay and compensation. Anybody?
right.
You want to talk about that?
Anyone want to be a guest for that?
I know. Oh my god, I might know one. But yeah, if it is pretty much based on, again, how society has adopted the patriarchal
Yes.
construct.
Yes.
You know, this is ingrained in our society, whether you are black, white, especially in this country.
Yes.
It's really kind of just ingrained.
Mhm.
And we take that based on how this country was formed.
Mhm.
So it is a part of the original history of this country that men are valued more because they are looked at as the provider,
Mhm.
and women continue to be viewed as the one who can bear more of the house family issues,
right, the domestic.
the domestic situation. Yeah.
So to interpret what JR is dancing around a little bit, we've touched on it on Move the Needle many times.
Yeah.
The systemic constructs that the country was built on was to make sure the white male landowners stayed in power.
Don't say that.
I'm telling the secret, man. I'm telling the secret. But no, that's what it was founded on. Whatever you feel, right or wrong, that's just what is, right?
Right.
We're not sitting here saying that, oh, every white male has to pay for that. No, that's not what we're saying.
No.
We're not saying white people have to pay for that. But to be real and understand where we are today with such things like this gender pay gap.
Right.
There's a reason it's there, because well, and again, there's no reason it should be there. But there is
we know the reason.
Context.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, we know the historical reasons why.
Exactly. So that we want to be clear that, going back to the founding of this country, and over time, things have gotten better, but we need to do better. You know?
It's looking at, I know we're going to keep going, but it's
sure.
It's looking at this from a perspective of, on its merit, this should not be.
Correct.
However, given reality, that is far from the truth.
Yeah, right.
It's just gaslighting that, people think that, everything is, great for everybody, and that is not the case. Right. It's like, hey, look at all these underrepresented communities that, have been burdened and impacted by,
this construct. So, and it's no different than we talk about theory and application, right?
Right.
In theory, yes, right? The Constitution says everyone is owed, freedom and life and liberty, right? And yes, I'm highly paraphrasing, of course, but that's in theory. So in practical application, did that happen? No.
Right.
No.
Right.
And have we gotten better at putting the theory into practice?
Right.
Somewhat.
I will say, exactly.
Somewhat.
I will say that there wasn't an opinion, historically, with that. It was something that was discussed.
Correct.
With the original forefathers of our country. Slavery was discussed because there were,
there were financial implications.
There were people who were saying, should we move forward with this? Knowing that it's a human atrocity, knowing that it's a main primary economic driver for a lot of businesses, which are owned by,
white men,
mainly white men.
Yeah.
So it's not divorced of, it's not divorced of anything else that we haven't been talking about.
Right.
Just remember, this is all a part of this construct that we're in.
And that's
like
why,
it or not.
And that's why I like how we're trying to come from a different perspective, right? Yes, there's always talk about race. Yes, there's always talk about gender. But if you look at it from this financial aspect, right? There are just facts that, again, should not exist at this point. Okay.
Right.
I do want to add one thing from the article. A great point here. And again, I've done this research with the Census Bureau. The information is there, right? So they point out. Again, just to give you guys the head, we're talking about the domestic work burden falling on working women, right? The Census Bureau backs this up with data. So single mothers who earn less than $30,000 a year made up 48% of the workforce in 2019, while single fathers in the same income category were only 26%.
Hmm.
That's a big deal, right? Let me make
Yeah.
sure I read that again. Yeah. Yep. Single mothers who earn less than 30,000 a year made up 48% of the workforce.
Yeah.
And
Basically
single
half.
in 2019, in 2018.
Yeah. Yeah.
And single fathers of the same income just 26%.
Yeah. We're about a
So
quarter.
that clearly shows the distinction between single parents. And we're
Yeah.
talking 3 years ago. We're not
Yeah.
talking 1960s, 70s,
Right.
80s.
Still going on. Yeah.
3
And
years ago.
I think that is kind of indicative of just, how society has continued to carry on
Mhm.
the traditions of a household and of a family.
The
We have,
patriarchal,
yeah, in our family, we are kind of opposites in terms of kind of domestic roles where,
Mhm.
I'm in charge of the cooking and, the
Mhm.
laundry,
Mhm.
and, the kitchen,
Yeah.
kitchen and
Yeah.
clothes, that's me, you know,
That's yeah,
um,
because in a traditional patriarchal society, or at least here, right?
yeah,
That's like you said, that's almost opposite.
right.
And that's why I offered our audience that you and I specifically have definitely taken on a lot of domestic burden, if you will, right? And
Yeah.
not
And I
because
hate
someone
I hate
told us
that
to.
word, the burden. Yeah, I
Burden?
hate that word.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
say that in the article, and some
yeah.
use it.
I
Yeah,
know, I know.
but but right. So
Yeah,
let's redefine that real quick because I don't
right.
think it's a burden either. It's just something
Hmm.
that you do, right?
Right,
So
right.
somebody has to do it. So
Yeah,
okay, well,
yeah.
if your
It.
wife is working, my hands are not broken, so I
I
can
know.
cook a
You
meal, I
better go.
can wash the
Yeah, you go.
clothes.
Better go learn. Better go learn really quickly.
Exactly, right?
You know.
Yeah. It's not it's not a burden. You know what? I'm going on a tangent here. It's almost like when people say, "Yeah, well, I had to watch my kid."
I
What?
know.
Like,
Like who actually says that?
I,
Oh my god! I had to watch my kid.
that's your kid. So yeah, like
I've
I'm
heard that
sorry
as
you
a
had to.
joke, but I don't know if I've heard anyone say it like seriously.
I've
Have you?
I've heard people use it for real.
Oh my god.
So, and I'm sitting there like, yeah, that's your child. Yeah, yeah, I got to go
Yeah.
watch my kids. Sorry, sorry that
Yeah,
they're
my spouse is
yours.
going out.
Yeah, yeah.
We sound kind of pompous. It's like what are you
Well, hey,
doing?
we're trying to bring a new breed of man into this whole
Yeah,
thing here, but that's
yeah.
another episode for another day.
Mhm. Yep.
So here's where I'm gonna get on to the last few tips,
Mhm.
but I have to say that I'm not sure I agree with these. I agree with these tips,
Yeah.
but not in the ways of closing the gender pay gap. Okay.
Right.
And before I get to the tips, I'll say I don't necessarily agree with them for closing the gender pay gap
Mhm.
because while they are great tips, they don't really address the root problem, which
Right.
we've kind of mentioned, right?
Yep.
It's the system and the construct that's kind of in place. And until you really dig deeper below the surface to address that, like these tips are great, at least these next few that I'm going to mention, but they don't really have anything with closing the gender pay gap. It's really,
Right.
I think you should do this anyway. So,
I know. Yeah. In spite of this, do these
right,
things. In
right,
spite of it, we already know, we acknowledge it,
right.
but do these things anyway. Yeah.
So tip number 9 is prioritize saving and investing, but
Mm.
make sure you still have an emergency fund.
Oh man. Oh,
So that's a
like
great tip.
I wish that I could do that. Prioritize saving and investing. Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So you understand why again, like that's a great tip. I don't want
Just
to
in general. Yeah.
yeah, that's a great thing, but I'm not sure that falls really in line with
Yeah.
how women can close the gender pay gap.
Mhm.
That's that is a great thing for financial security for yourself.
Right.
That doesn't address being paid 68 cents less on the dollar, or 64 cents less, or 82 cents. That doesn't
Yeah.
address that.
This is kind of the
Yeah, that's
long-term goal.
yeah.
The article, and I have it in front of me too. The article talks
Mhm.
about being able to prepare to take yourself, on leave or on a sabbatical, or part timing. Once you get to that long-term goal of yours for
Right,
retirement or moving on. Like,
right.
yeah,
But don't you
absolutely. But that's
don't you
kind of
have
a
to get there?
general,
Right.
yeah,
You have to get
it's
there
still a
first.
general thing. Yeah, it's still a
Mhm.
general concept that I think applies to everybody. Not
Sure.
just women. It applies to me as a black man. I
And
need to save my ducats.
well, to say same thing with tip number 10, right?
Hmm.
The 10th tip is stick to a personal financial plan. Okay, like yes, agreed, 100%.
Yeah,
Like that's a great tip,
yeah,
but I guess I just don't. And again, I don't want to detract from the positivity of the article,
hmm,
but we could have stopped at tip number 8, right? Because, at least in my opinion, those things were empowering tips for women in the workforce, right? For
right, yeah,
working mothers, working women, on how to help facilitate the conversation
hmm,
of getting to the root problem of there
right,
being a gender pay gap in the first place, right?
right. Like no
Helping
one wants
make
to
employers
address
aware.
it. Yeah, yeah. No
Right.
one wants to
Help.
address it.
Mhm.
Let's work around that. Yeah.
So at least those things got to the
Hmm.
conversation of why there's a
Yeah.
gap. And oh, okay,
Yeah.
maybe your employer wasn't aware of it. You can work on those things. But
Right.
so 9 and 10,
Hmm.
not quite sure those help further the conversation. Those are more about personal choices
Yeah.
and nothing to do with the pay gap, in my opinion, of course.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Um, and number 11, okay, I'll read number 11 and I'll ask you how you feel about it.
Yeah.
Tip number 11 is never blame yourself for the gender pay gap.
Huh? What?
that, was,
What?
that was my reaction too. Like,
What?
yeah,
Huh?
I'm not
I don't.
sure. And you know
I
what?
don't. I don't think anyone blames themselves for the gender pay gap.
JR,
Maybe.
I'm gonna open this up. I would love for I wish we were live, because I
Hmm.
would love for calls right now, right? But anyone listening to this, and if you share it with working women, I would
Hmm.
love for any working women to send comments to us about this particular tip, right? Because I don't know any working woman who would blame themselves for the gender pay gap. I honestly don't. I I'm not sure I really get that mindset. I
Yeah.
don't I
Maybe
don't know
that's a
anyone.
blind spot. Yeah.
It could be. Could
Yeah.
be.
I didn't
But
know
but
that was a thing.
but do you see how tips 9, 10, and 11, yes, prioritize investing and
Hmm.
saving, stick to your financial plan, and it doesn't even feel right saying it. Don't blame yourself for the gender pay gap. Those don't really fall into the category of being proactive or empowering for helping women close the gender pay gap. I-
Because, yeah, I guess because I'm a woman, I should feel sorry for myself.
th- okay,
Right?
that's what I
Right?
read into it too, right? That's what it made me
Like,
think.
what? No. No.
Yeah,
What?
that's
What?
almost the same thing as saying, "Oh, you know what? I'm a black man here in this country, and I know that there are roadblocks in my way, so I should just give up, and I should let them, you know,
Now, yeah.
dictate what
Yeah.
happens to
This is
me."
my lane.
Yeah, so I'm gonna stay in it.
This is all
Or
I got. I mean, maybe that is something. Maybe people do feel it.
that's why.
Maybe it's more intrinsic than we realize.
Well,
It,
and I'm willing to accept that. I've had this
yeah.
conversation with
Yeah.
a lot of my female friends who are working women and working moms, right?
Yeah.
And I've even seen it with my wife.
Hmm.
So I'll
My
mention it
wife.
this way.
Yeah.
I have seen it and understand where a lot of working mothers have that guilt, right?
Mm.
For whatever time they spend
Yeah.
or don't spend with their families and children,
Yeah.
right?
That
I've seen
pressure.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
understand that. I've heard it
Hmm.
more than
Hmm.
once.
Yeah.
But this tip number 11 still doesn't feel like I don't see, don't blame yourself for that. It's
Yeah.
the guilt that working women have felt and expressed for not being able to spend time with their families still doesn't equate or vibe to blaming themselves for the gender pay gap either.
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
that's why I said, man, I'm opening it up to it. Please email us, send a comment to the show, something. Let us know what you think about this because I'm struggling with that particular tip
Well,
for sure.
yeah, I guess feeling bad that they have to make the sacrifice.
Mm,
I think that may be a part of what this particular
the tip,
suggest, this tip is. So I kind of get it, I guess. And that's just my ignorance about how, I guess, institutionalized this really is, that I
Sure.
can't see it. I can't, but once you start to frame out some examples of, a mother, a woman having to make
Mhm.
the sacrifice, because of the situation, because
Sure.
they can't afford it, or it's just economically not feasible for
Mhm.
them. I guess I can see something around that. But yeah, I would have probably reworded this particular tip.
I might have
Yeah.
left it out
Or yeah,
because,
even that.
well, because, and again, I'm willing to be with you on any ignorance I have
Hmm.
about what that might feel like, right?
Yeah.
For a working woman,
Yep.
definitely willing to admit any ignorance I have on that.
Hmm.
I'm still struggling to see how that fit. Again, if we've been through this article, we've been through the tips
Hmm.
1 through 8. I can see where they were actionable, they were empowering. Again, they also helped move the conversation around the deeper rooted construct of the gender pay
Hmm.
gap, right?
Yeah. Yep.
These
Hmm.
and okay, maybe these last 3 tie into mindset and getting working women into a mindset where you deserve the equal pay, right?
Hmm.
Getting you to understand, yes, if you prioritize saving, if you have a financial plan, and it's not your fault that it's this way.
Yeah. It's framing your
Mm,
evolution, the change
yeah,
of your mindset that is necessary or needed to help manifest
to
the other tips.
but I'm sorry, it's a struggle for me to see that
Yeah. And
way.
that is in the eye of the beholder and the reader.
Yeah,
I think the author, definitely tried to encapsulate that, but I think it just didn't come across
I
clearly.
I think
But
so.
yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Well, you guys, this has been the latest episode of Move the Needle. We have appreciated your time and really hope you dig into understanding these inequities. And today this episode, we've highlighted the gender pay gap and what some tips are. Obviously, we are fans of tip 1 through 8, but tips 9, 10, 11 are about mindset as well. Folks, you can hear us on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, Amazon. You can find us on some other platforms, lesser known platforms as well. JR, it's been a pleasure having you back. Glad you're healthy again, and we look forward to bringing you guys another episode of Move the Needle next month.